I was standing in my bedroom on a Tuesday morning, putting on a pair of heavy denim work jeans that I had owned for about 5 years. These were the same jeans I used to wear during my last few years, managing the floor at the logistics warehouse downtown. Back then, they fit tight around the thighs. I had to pull them up with a bit of effort because my legs were built from 30 years of carrying boxes, climbing metal stairs, and standing on solid concrete for 10 hours a day. But on this particular Tuesday morning, as I pulled those same jeans up, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There was loose fabric. I could reach down and pinch an inch of empty denim right above my knee. My legs, the foundation that had carried me through my entire adult life, were quietly shrinking. They were getting thinner, softer, and weaker, and I had absolutely no idea how to stop it. That realization does something to a man. It is a very quiet, very lonely kind of fear. You do not talk about it at the hardware store. You do not mention it to your wife over coffee. You just start noticing that getting out of a deep armchair takes a little more momentum than it used to. You start looking at the stairs in your own house and calculating the effort before you take the first step. You feel that tiny split-second hesitation when you step off a curb. I knew I was losing muscle, and I did exactly what every single man of my generation was taught to do when we need to get strong. I went to the kitchen and I started eating eggs. I boiled them, I scrambled them, I ate them in the morning, and sometimes I ate them in the afternoon. I figured protein was protein, and if I just forced enough eggs down my throat, my legs would remember how to be strong again. But weeks went by and the weakness did not leave. The jeans did not fit any better. The stairs did not get any easier. In fact, my legs felt heavier, and I felt exhausted trying to digest all of that heavy food. I was frustrated, bordering on angry, until my daughter Megan came over for a visit one Sunday afternoon. Megan is an occupational therapist. She spends her life working with older folks, helping them keep their balance, rebuild their strength, and stay in their homes. She walked into my kitchen, saw the giant flat of eggs on the counter, looked at my plate, and then she sat down across from me with a look of deep sympathy. She told me the hard truth that nobody else was saying. She explained that eating eggs to build muscle after you pass 70 is like pouring premium gasoline into a truck with a broken fuel line. The fuel is good, but the engine is never going to get it. She told me that as we age, our digestive system fundamentally changes. The acid in our stomachs gets weaker. The enzymes that tear apart food slow down. When a 30-year-old eats an egg, their gut easily breaks down that dense protein and shoots it straight into their muscles. When a 73-year-old man like me eats that same egg, a massive percentage of that protein simply passes through the body unabsorbed. My legs were shrinking not because I was not eating protein, but because my aging gut could no longer extract the protein from the eggs I was stubbornly swallowing every morning. The muscle was starving while the stomach was full. I sat there looking at my plate, realizing that my pride and my stubborn reliance on old habits were actively costing me my independence. But Megan did not just bring bad news. She brought a solution. She explained that my body needed protein that was already broken down. It needed food where the hard work of digestion was already partially done before it even entered my mouth. And she told me about 3 very specific types of cheese. She made it clear that she was not talking about the square plastic wrapped slices we throw on a hamburger. She was talking about real, active, functional foods that contain specific compounds that bypass an aging digestive system and go straight into the muscle fibers of the legs. I want to share these 3 specific things with you today, exactly the way I learned them. And I need you to pay close attention to the second one I will mention, because that is the one that actually stops your body from cannibalizing your own leg muscles while you are fast asleep in your bed. If you are listening to me right now, I know exactly where you are sitting. I know the frustration of feeling your body betray the promises it made to you in your 40s. I spent over 3 decades working in logistics. I moved heavy freight. I treated my body like a machine, and I fully expected that machine to keep running smoothly well into my twilight years. But retirement changes things. The daily heavy movement stops. You sit a little more. You rest a little longer. And the muscle, which is an incredibly expensive tissue for the body to maintain, simply packs up and leaves if you do not give it a very good reason to stay. I watched friends of mine lose their mobility entirely because they ignored the early warning signs. They thought getting weaker was just the tax you pay for getting older. It is not. You just have to change the tools you use to fight back. The first change Megan made me make involved a cheese I had walked past in the grocery store 1,000 times without ever paying attention to. She told me to start eating real Swiss cheese. Not the processed deli meat cheese, but the real fermented Swiss that comes in blocks. I always thought cheese was just fat and calories, something you ate as a treat. But Megan explained what happens during the fermentation process of real Swiss cheese. Those holes in the cheese are not just there for decoration. They are created by specific bacteria that break down the dairy proteins before you ever take a bite. Because the protein is already broken down, an older stomach does not have to fight to absorb it. It slides right into the bloodstream. But that was not even the part that surprised me the most. Megan printed out some pages from a study she read, something about the biology of aging muscles. She pointed to a compound inside fermented Swiss cheese called propionic acid. She explained that inside every single muscle cell in our legs there are tiny engines called mitochondria. When we get older, those engines get rusty. They sputter. They fail to produce the energy needed to contract the muscle. That is why your legs feel heavy on the stairs. That propionic acid acts like a mechanic for those engines. It wakes up the muscle stem cells. It actively repairs the fibers. The paper she showed me observed a group of older adults who added fermented high-quality dairy to their diet, and they showed a significant increase in muscle protein synthesis even when they were just sitting in a chair resting. Their muscles were rebuilding themselves without them even lifting a weight. I started incorporating it into my routine right away. I have a buddy in the neighborhood named Arthur. Arthur is a retired mechanic, 75 years old, and a few months ago he was struggling so badly with his knees and his leg strength that he was having a hard time getting out of his low-riding sedan. I told him what Megan told me. Arthur started taking his morning walk, and 30 minutes after he got back, instead of eating a heavy breakfast that made him tired, he would let a few thick slices of real Swiss cheese come to room temperature and eat them with a piece of sourdough bread. The sourdough helped with his digestion, and the room temperature cheese absorbed faster. After a month, Arthur told me that the heavy, dead feeling in his thighs when he got out of his car was starting to fade. The engine was getting its fuel again, but fixing the daytime routine was only half the battle. The part that really scared me was learning what my body was doing in the dark. That brings me to the second change, the one that deals with the nighttime muscle loss. Think about it. You eat dinner at 6 or 7 in the evening. You do not eat breakfast until 7 or 8 the next morning. That is 12 to 14 hours where your body has zero food coming in, but your heart still beats. Your lungs still breathe. Your body needs fuel to keep you alive while you sleep. And as we get older, if the body does not have fuel in the stomach, it panics. It goes looking for energy. And the absolute easiest place for a 70-year-old body to steal energy from is the muscle tissue in the legs. You literally wake up weaker than when you went to sleep. Megan explained that to stop this, I needed a very specific type of protein that digests so incredibly slowly that it trickles nutrients into my bloodstream all night long. That is where cottage cheese comes in. I will be honest, I never liked cottage cheese. The texture bothered me, but I learned to look at it differently. I started looking at it as medicine for my independence. Cottage cheese is loaded with something called casein protein. Unlike eggs, which digest quickly and leave you empty hours later, casein forms a slow-releasing gel in your stomach. It drips amino acids into your body for up to 7 straight hours. I read the numbers from a clinical nutrition observation Megan showed me. They tracked seniors who consumed slow-digesting dairy proteins like casein right before bed. The results were clear. The steady release of amino acids overnight completely halted the muscle degradation process. Their bodies stopped cannibalizing their own legs. Plus, the probiotics in the cottage cheese helped their aging guts actually absorb the nutrients. I have a friend named Jim. He is the father-in-law of my son, Derek. Jim lives in a beautiful two-story house, but he was seriously considering selling it because the stairs were becoming a mountain for him. His legs were just giving out. Derek convinced him to try the nighttime routine. Every single night, about an hour before bed, Jim eats 1 cup of plain cottage cheese. No sugar, no fruit, just the plain functional protein. He told me the biggest difference was not just in his strength, but in his balance. He stopped waking up feeling brittle. He woke up feeling solid. His legs had been fed while he slept. Before I tell you about the last one on this list, the one that completely changed the way my wife and I eat our midday meals, I want to pause for a second. I am sitting here talking to you from my own experience, but I want to know about yours. If you had to stop right now and rate the current strength of your legs on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the legs you had in your 30s and 1 being a daily struggle to stand up, what number would you give yourself? I want you to write that number down for me. I spend a lot of time reading what you write because it helps me understand exactly who is sitting on the other side of this conversation. We are in this same boat together, and knowing where you stand helps me figure out what we need to talk about next. That brings me to the final piece of the puzzle, the most powerful one of the three, and the one you have to be the most careful about when you are shopping. I am talking about traditional Greek feta cheese. Now, you have to listen to me carefully here because the grocery stores are full of tricks. I'm not talking about the crumbly cow's milk cheese that comes in a plastic tub and calls itself feta. That stuff will not do anything for your muscles. I'm talking about real traditional Greek feta made from sheep's milk and aged in wooden barrels. It is a completely different animal, and it is the closest thing to a miracle food for aging legs that I have found. The secret inside sheep's milk feta is a powerful fatty acid called CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. When my daughter Megan was explaining this to me, she described CLA like a heavy-duty delivery truck. You can eat all the protein in the world, but if it does not get driven directly inside the muscle cell, it is useless. CLA penetrates the cell wall. It carries bioactive peptides right into the core of the aging muscle. I remember reading about the observations of traditional Mediterranean diets. They looked at communities where men and women well into their 80s and 90s were still walking up steep, rocky hills every single day without walking sticks. The researchers found that the specific fermentation of sheep's milk feta stimulated something in the body that cleans out the dead, weak cells and forces the muscle to rebuild itself from scratch. It is a biological recycling system, and real feta turns the key. Eggs, no matter how many you eat, simply do not possess that mechanism. They cannot bypass the digestive hurdles of a 70-year-old gut, and they certainly cannot deliver those bioactive peptides deep into the tissue. The way my wife Linda prepares this for us changed everything. Around lunchtime, she takes a good block of real sheep's milk feta and crumbles it over a bowl of cucumbers and tomatoes. But the most important part is that she pours real olive oil over the top. The healthy fats from the olive oil work together with the cheese to dramatically increase how much of that protein my stomach can absorb. I eat that for lunch, and I do not feel bloated, I do not feel heavy, and most importantly, I do not feel weak. I remember the morning I realized all of this was actually working. I was out in the garage organizing some heavy wooden crates filled with old tools. Without even thinking about it, I squatted down, picked up a crate that must have weighed 40 pounds, and stood straight back up. There was no hesitation. There was no shaking in my thighs. There was no pain in my knees. I just stood up. I set the crate down on the workbench, and I just stared at my own legs for a minute. The fear that had been sitting in the back of my mind for months, that quiet terror of slowly losing my freedom, just evaporated. I realized that the decline was not inevitable. The muscle loss was not a mandatory sentence for turning 70. I was just feeding a changing machine with the wrong kind of fuel. Finding these things out gave me my confidence back. It turned the grocery store from a place where I just bought things to survive into a place where I bought the tools to rebuild my own independence. I stopped fighting my aging body and started working with it. I stopped forcing down heavy foods that my stomach hated and started eating foods that nature had already prepared for me to absorb. If you are looking down at your own legs right now and worrying about how long they are going to keep carrying you, I want you to know that you are not out of time. The muscle is still there, it is just waiting for the right signal to wake back up. You do not need to go to the store and buy all three of these things today. Just pick one. Maybe you start with the plain cottage cheese tonight before you go to sleep. See how your legs feel when you put your feet on the floor tomorrow morning. Give your body the building blocks it can actually use, and you will be amazed at how quickly it remembers how to be strong. I am going to stay right here, continuing to figure these things out, continuing to test what works, and continuing to share it with you, because there is a whole lot of life left for us to live, and we need our legs underneath us to go live it. Take care of yourselves, pay attention to what your body is telling you, and I will be here talking to you again very soon.